Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 12, Week 9 Power Rankings, the final week of the season in the books, playoffs incoming. I am your host, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalants, and as always, I am joined by Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey, everybody.
We are, of course, well past the trade deadline, so we get to go right into the action for what happened in Week 9, the final week. Some obvious consequences to this week, but this match was the most important one. It was a good one, too, earning our feature match this week, but the consequences that the floodgates have opened thanks to a 3-0 victory by the Psyducks over the Incineroar. That earns the Psyducks the final seed in the playoffs. Congrats to them, and allows two other coaches an opportunity to make it in two. Check out this feature match on this channel, but we need to check out the other matches to figure out the remaining seeding. Next up, it's the teacher versus the mentee as the Burbs take on the team that they got the Mudkips into the league in the first place. This time it's the Mudkips who snagged victory over the Red Hot Burbs 5-0. Halucha, Swords Dancing turn 1, but Armarouche tanks it and KOs back. Ting Lu and Great Tusk trade hazards. Ting Lu tanks a couple Hurricanes from the Jugulus to bring it low, and after 2 layers of spikes, the Tusk takes down the Bull. Tried saying that 5 times fast. Great Tusk follows that up with a Terra Steel to safely remove the hazards, and then, brother, my brother, the Slow Twins together again. But Slowking has Shadow Ball to do some meaningful damage, and that's going to let in Chen Pao, though, and Crunch gets the KO on Great Tusk. Some nice pivoting around Breloom, including Terra Poison on Slowbro, and the Lumberry to wake it up immediately and bring Breloom low. Well, you handled one Spore, yes, but what about the second one? That'll let Slowking back in easily, and then a Chilly Reception into C Titan. Belly Drum, Body Press brings it to 41%. And that's game. Some creative switching to get off 2 Intimidates, but a +4 Ice Shard. Still 2 at KO's Iron Moth, so the last 4 KOs are all going the way of Sea Titan. A 5-0 win for the Mudkips, which will give them a spot in the playoffs as well. Knights of the Burbs to give them that shot. Finally, the Lorraine Lairon wrap up the playoffs party with a W of their own, a 4-0 over Adams Pidgey Emporium. A nice early taunt, but Glamora will outpace Meowscarada's damage. Neat matchup here. Ditto swaps into Iron Hands' Volt Switch. Staraptor is in. Bravebird the Ditto. Wild Charge the Staraptor, and both go down. Very funny, but right after the real Iron Hands did stand up, taking down Meowscarada, utilizing its great bulk. Haxor is out. Swords Dance. Oh boy, Dondozo gonna need to answer this. A second Swords Dance. Wave Crash only does a quarter back. Terra Dragon, Dragon Claw into the sacked Glamora. Chi-Yu, though, into Revenge, and does over half to Toxapex. Wow, but the low roll in the next Dark Pulse means Pex at least gets off a Toxic first. Corviknight 2 KO'd, then Pex can force it out thanks to the sheer amount of health on it. T-Spikes up, Bronzong sets up Stealth Rock and gets a light screen on Volcarona. Okay, Terra Ground EQ from the Bronzong? That's a 3 at KO. Okay, not terrible. That'll force out Pex, which is also a 3 at KO. Dondozo in now to try and curse up on the Pex. Looks like there's no haze. No damage happening here. Makes me sleepy, and Dozo does rest to heal off the poison. At +6/+6, that's over half damage to Toxapex with a resisted Wave Crash. Very strong. And eventually Pex is out of recovers. That's what we do here in the league, is we PP stall Toxapexes. In an attempt to bring it back, Volcarona swaps in on a Sleep Talk rolling Wave Crash. Yikes. Hexorus is taking as much in Life Orb recoil as damaging with Dragon Claw, and it's over from there. The Dozo Bozo has lifted the Lairon into the playoffs as well. Finally, the Bouffalant and the Steamlords for the number 1 seed. It's been called the greatest match in the history of the league, and I can't say I disagree. From Perish Song Gengar to depleting the entirety of a Dragonite's power points purposefully, this really was the match of all time, and I'm afraid I could not possibly do it justice here. Suffice it to say, the Bouffalant were victorious. That doesn't seem like the right term we're looking for, but it'll have to work for now. The Bouffalant grabbing the number 1 seed, and with the Mighty Miltanks on by, that is what happened in the Johto Conference. In Paldea, there were a couple of very important matches as to who makes it in. But we have to start with the match that would determine the fate of 2 coaches, the Agrons and the club. But the Agrons ruined everyone's fun with a convincing 5-0 victory, securing them a playoff spot as well. Iron Treads with the early spin of T-Spikes. Noivern swaps in on Slowking's Grass Knot and U-turn crits. Things are looking up for the club until the Chilly Reception into Baxcalibur. Grimmsnarl can reflect, but Baxcalibur is dancing up. Oh, a nice taunt to stop further setup, but Bax is on the attacks. Sorry. Icicle Spear is a 2 at KO. Iron Hands takes less than half, though, and after the Dragon Terra backs, it takes less than half from the Drain Punch back. Sword Stance on the second Icicle Spear. Citrus recovers health. That was greedy. Glaive Rush just KOs after that. Palafin is in, but Cloudsire isn't unaware of its power. Water Absorb stops it cold. We've got some pivoting around. Noivern versus Dawnfan eventually. Draco Meteor brings Dawnfan to 1 thanks to Sturdy, but Ice Spinner KOs back. Iron Treads KOs the modern day counterpart. Then EQ does over half to Claude while only taking a third back. Is this the comeback? Slowking barely takes 2 EQs, but it does, and Slack off to heal up. Chilly Reception out to Screamtail. Reflect, Wish, out to Excalibur, now at full health. Oh, Baby's got backs, and taking nothing from Treads, and set up the second D-Dance this time. Good job, Joey. And Treads OHKO'd by Icicle Spear. The final 2 by Glaive Rush. That's the win for Joey's Agrons in the end of the road for the CCC. And that makes it a win or go home for Sasbo's Boulder Boulders, but the Wooper Troopers continue to play spoiler. This is in the biggest way yet, as they take down the Boulders at the very end of the season, a 3-0. Turn 1 Volt Switch into Hatterene on Annihilate Stealth Rock, very smart. Nuzzle to paralyze the bulking up Annihilate, but that powers up Rage Fist. Terra Poison to live, smart. Triggers Eject button, not smart. Terra Normal Annihilate in response, and Rotom tricks to pair of Spectacles, but Rage Fist OHKO's back, that's kind of crazy. It does a ton to Gastro too, but Gastro counters back with counter for the KO. What is happening? Ting Lu tanks Iron Jugulus a bit, but Tauros forces it out and KOs Gastrodon. Iron Valiant in early. Booster Energy. Substitute gets damage on Arcanine, but Roar to phase it out. Very impressive, and then it takes most of Ting Lu's health along with it. Tauros revenges that too. Then Magnezone almost KOs Glamora with Volt Switch hanging on and forcing out Hat. Magnezone back in and survives on Sturdy with a nice Earth Power read from the Troopers. Hat healing Wish against a D-Dancing Iron Thorns. Magnezone hangs on and Flash Cannon does not KO. 2 EQs will do it to eliminate the Boldors and give the Troopers a respectable ending to their season. As for our playoffs team, we still have some seeding to sort out. First off, the Noctowls with the final match of the regular season, completing the 8-0 perfect regular season with the win over the Wobbuffets 4-0. Agility, Dragonite turn 1, Weird turn 2, Thunder hits Azumarill, but Wackenberry prevents most of the damage, then Life Orb recoil means that Play Rough KOs right back. Very, very interesting. Still have a bit of a vortex forming with Sandy Shocks, Volt Switch, Roaring Moon, U-turn, Shocks with another Volt. Oh, that's Great Tusk. Sorry, buddy. Ooh, Terra Ice, Terra Blast. Great Tusk survives on 18 and Headlong Rush now fails to KO back. Very cool Terra Ice. For Farigiraf is the tanky response. Wishing up and pivoting out into Hydreigon, whose Dracometer OHKOs Gengar easily, but Steve gets the sun up with Scovillain out KOing Azumarill. Sandy Shock sacrifice to Hydreigon, then a couple Flamethrowers from Scovillain take care of that guy. Iron Moth with the booster energy for speed outpaces Scovillain, then Dazzling Gleam to KO Roaring Moon, and the Terra Blast Water 2-hit KOs Torkoal to complete the undefeated regular season for the Noctowls. Finally, Quiet Majesty taking on the 1-win Kanto Kinglers for a shot at the 2-seed. Easy, right? Well, the 2-0 from the Kinglers. Was it enough to shake up the seeding? We'll see. Turn 1, Crocodile channeling the club with an OHKO from close combat onto Meowscarada. Got him. Sylveon with a couple Calm Minds and OHKO's Crocodile, but it takes a bit of chip from low kicks. Gardevoir hangs on but does nothing back. Sylveon Sweep Ball paralyzed. Again. First impression brings it to 4%. So close yet so far. Next up, Terra Electric Sea Titan. Terra Blast OHKO's Corviknight. Wow. Slowbro then and survives with 1%. It goes down after, but Sea Titan goes down to Lorb Recoil. Espathra in Protect. Salamence, Dragon Dance, Wind Con detected. Terra Dragon Outrage OHKO's. That's very nice. Sylveon in, and that will full para. Ironhead KOs that 2 Moxie boosts. EQ KOs Chi-Yu. Outrage KOs Garchomp. The Salamence sweep. And another respectable end. This one for the Kinglers too. And with the Zigzagoons on by, that is what happened in the Paldean Conference. Wow, was there a lot of movement here. We saw quite a few upsets. And that means we get to take a look at the power rankings for Johto first. And we have some similarities here. The Bouffalant, Steamrollers, and Burbs there. 1, 2, 3, same as before. Except we have a new number 4. It's the Lairon back in at 4. We can talk about this a little bit because we do want to talk about the full rankings of everyone in the playoffs, but not too much movement at the top here. Lairon look like maybe they're on a better path than a lot of the other teams that are sneaking in at 4 and 4 here, Steve.
Yeah, looking at, the top teams, of course there was the battle for the 1 seed. Although the battle certainly seemed to have some sillier aspects to it, definitely not enough to really change our opinions that the Bouffalant had a little bit of edge against the Steamrollers in our eyes, keeping the Bouffalant there at 1. The Steamrollers could have been passed by the Burbs after that loss, especially if the Burbs had a very strong showing here, continuing their impressive winning streak. But as they also lost, it really didn't seem like we should move them up. So kept the Steamrollers at 2. Burbs kind of, they are a win ahead of all of the 4 and 4 teams. Also, they had a very strong middle of their season, so it seemed reasonable to keep them there. And then, of course, the Lairon making it in of the 4 and 4 teams. They certainly had the most impressive wins, probably, and closest games for the 4 and 4 teams. Just taking a 0-1 loss to the Steamrollers a couple weeks ago as well as that early season win over the Burbs. Those big wins are certainly useful. It is a little bit concerning from them, as that does mean they have more losses towards other 4-4 teams. So that could come to mean they have some unfavorable matchups ahead of them in play-in games. But at face value, we certainly feel that they have a little bit of an edge moving forward.
And speaking of that edge over those other teams, why don't we just take a look at the full list of teams that make the playoffs? Yeah, from week about 4 or 5 onwards, we dreamed of all these teams being able to make playoffs. And they sure did. 7 teams making it 4 minimum, and all of these ended up taking advantage of the Incineroar's mini collapse here at the very end with the Psyducks. So in order, the Bouffalant at 1, Steamroars at 2, Burbs at 3 were pretty set, and from 4 through 7, it's all down to tiebreakers there. The Lairon at 4, the Incineroar at 5, the Mudkips at 6, 1 differential point behind the Incineroar. And the Summit County Psyducks there at 7, the only team with a negative differential there too. Steve, this is really cool to see, being able to see all these different teams make it in, and it came down to this new idea that we had for letting all these other teams that were tied for 4th place be able to make it in. This seems like this could be a big positive, and we're going to see a lot more interesting games here, and we didn't gatekeep anyone out by record, just by not by differential rather, but only by record. So I think this is actually pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I myself am a big fan of this format. It makes things a lot easier. Just saying, yeah, you just need one of the best 4 records. Differential doesn't matter. A win is a win. It'll get you there. And then once you're there, you can just win to make it. Doesn't matter, if you're the type of player who plays a game to get, that 1-0 win rather than kind of making some riskier plays for the 6-0, you will still make it and will not be punished for such decisions.
The only punishment that they would have would be where they end up. I mentioned before the Lairon with the best of that differential, and so they end up ahead of all the other teams by that metric. The Incineroar get to play them, so maybe those 2 teams with the better differential are looking a little bit better compared to the Mudkips having to play the Burbs again and the Psyducks having to play the Steamrollers. But we'll go into more details with the play-in games in just a little bit. Just wanted to cover the teams that did make it into the playoffs, and that we do indeed currently have the top 4 as those top 4 that we are expecting to make it through. But there's a whole another conference here, and we almost had the same amount of fun, but any chance we have to cancel Joey, I think we should take, and so Paldea ends up being a little more boring. We do have the power ranks to go over first. We do have the Noctiles up at number 1. That's pretty obvious, 8-0, and then 2, 3, and 4 all ending up at 5 and 3. There is a slight difference here actually from our power rankings compared to the actual bracket itself, but it shouldn't make too much of a difference there. We have the Wobbuffets at number 2 instead of number 3, and the Agrons at 3 instead of 2, where the bracket shows them at, and the Majesty down at 4. Those 3 teams, Steve, are very clumped together, but share a little bit of insight as to why we have the teams ordered the way that we do right now.
Yeah, so one thing we took a look at is the regular season losses. Of course, they all lost to the Noctiles. Those are all effectively equivalent. They all lost against one of the other 5-3 teams and beat the other, so kind of a triangle there that we can roughly ignore. But the biggest thing was that third team the teams lost to. The Agron losing to the Boldors, who are the kind of best placing team that didn't make it. The Wobbuffet losing to the Troopers, who were also, that spoiler team there at the end. And then the Quiet Majesty losing this past week to the Kanto Kinglers. Kind of the most surprising of the upsets, I would say. Definitely that one seemed like a sure win that did not go their way. That kind of led to the initial decision of the Majesty being lower. Additionally, a part of that is they are the 4 seed in ranking, and as such, they have the path through the Noctiles to start, which seems like a pretty big disadvantage, kind of cementing them as that number 4 spot. Between the Agrons and the Wobbuffets, it really came down to historical performance. The Wobbuffets have been a stronger team historically. In addition, they seem to have the Agrons' number. I'm not sure the last time these teams have played in the playoffs, but I do know outside of the playoffs, the Wobbuffets have not lost to the Agron. So a little bit of a historical advantage there. Was the case in their match earlier this season, and we'll see if that holds through the playoffs.
And I guess we can move along then to the playoff bracket here. 1 through 4. That's going to be Noctowls and Majesty playing in that semifinals, and Agrons and Wobbuffets. We already touched on the context, that middle one there. It is a shame, too, we had a couple of teams just miss out. The Boulder Boulders there at 4 and 4. Had they won, they would have been in there at the 5. Would have had a neat little play-in game between them and the Majesty. But as it is, something that we actually had discussed earlier, Steve, the Wobbuffets and Boulders had the same schedule as each other, the same matchups that they won and lost, except when they played each other, the Wobbuffets won, so they got the edge there, which is pretty neat. Close Combat Club, had they won as well, would have included them into the playoff mix too, which would have been pretty neat. But again, the Agrons just playing a spoiler for everyone here, in addition to the Kinglers beating the Majesty and the Troopers beating the Boulders. So we're just left with these 4, Steve.
Yep, just these 4. An interesting note on the ordering of them. The Noctowls, of course, no surprise there. The Agrons did have the highest differential of the 5 and 3. However, the Wobbuffets and the Quiet Majesty actually tied on differential, and it went to KOs. It's not very often we get to that next level beyond differential for the tiebreaker, but in this case, it's working out for the Wobbuffets as they're the 3, get to play the Agron again, and will miss playing the Noctowls in this first round of the playoffs.
For at least one round, I suppose our power rankings below the Noctowls don't matter too much because they've been so far ahead of everyone, but it looks like it's going to be the Majesty with the first crack at them, followed by the Wobbuffets or Agrons, the winner of. We don't need to talk about them yet because in this last section we have the play-in matches. This is technically an off week for everyone except for those who need to play play-in matches. Thank goodness we didn't have all 9 teams in one conference make it in. We have a play-in to a play-in, but instead we get 3 matches to look at, which should be, I think, an absolute blast. It's going to be these play-in matches here. The number 2 Seattle Steamrollers versus the number 7 Summit County Psyducks. Number 3 Route 1 Burbs versus the number 6 Music City Mudkips. The number 4 Lorraine Laron versus the number 5 Cincinnati Incineroar. Steve, all of these teams obviously played each other already in the regular season. I'll start up there at the top. Steamrollers and Psyducks. What happened the first time these teams faced off, and what are you expecting to see?
So for the Steamrollers and Psyducks, these teams first met in Week 4. At this point, this was when the Psyducks were on their hot streak, 3-0, I believe number 2 in the power rankings at this point, going against the Steamrollers, who were also 3-0 at that point. And the Steamrollers did come away with a big 5-0 victory, really helped by the Gengar in this matchup. Since then, these teams have traded with each other, exchanging Sandy Shocks and Klefki. So it will be a little bit of a different matchup than what they had previously had. Regardless, I would definitely still favor the Steamrollers. They have been struggling a little more recently, getting some losses or some close wins, but they definitely are the historically stronger team and have shown a lot of good things. So I definitely expect them to still win, but it would be a great story for the Psyducks to play a spoiler here.
Yeah, the Psyducks they were on the verge of having maybe the biggest collapse we've ever seen in missing the playoffs after starting 3-0, but a strong win at the end, really helping them out. This could be their chance too. It looks like they're a momentum-based team, and if they just cut a W, you never know. Could be the Psyducks' time. And again, they're slightly retooled teams here as well. See if maybe the Psyducks have figured something out there. Next up, the Burbs and Mudkips. I could ask what happened last time, Steve, but I already kind of summarized it a little bit just now. 2 consecutive weeks for these 2 teams playing, Steve. What are we expecting then?
Yeah, just playing last week, it'll be a very interesting dynamic. This past week, of course, the Titan just decimating the team. So definitely expect the Burbs to be a little bit more prepared for it, try and have some additional options, whether that be priority or walls or just never giving it the chance to set up. Maybe some counter weather shenanigans, which is definitely something the Burbs would do. Lots of options there to try and stop this Titan from going all over the team. Outside of that, that's really it. Honestly, just seeing what to do to stop Titan and what the other pieces in this matchup are doing.
It would seem that the Burbs are favored, but this matchup really does seem difficult for them, as shown by this last one here. You can't really say that the Burbs didn't go all out, because if they had won, then they would have guaranteed not to face the Mudkips again here, as opposed to maybe some other matchups. So this is pretty interesting. To see what kind of adjustments both teams are going to make. Are there going to be over adjustments? Are you going to stick too much to your original game plan? This should be a lot of fun, not just in the context of playing each other again, but 2 weeks in a row. Definitely should be a blast. And finally, the 4 and 5 teams, the Lairon and the Incineroar, both sneaking in there at 4 and 4 identical records. And what happened the first time here, Steve?
The first time back in Week 7, I believe, the Incineroar were able to pull away with the 2-0 victory. A lot on the heads of the Palafin hero after being brought back with Revival Blessing. Had a fantastic job cleaning up at the end after a lot of checks have been broken down during Palafin's first run through the team, as well as the rest of the team setting up for it. Very close battle, very great game. Definitely the match that I would suspect to be the best among these. The Incineroar, after losing last week, may be cooling off. We'll see. It was only one loss, but they can be a little bit of a streaky team, so we'll see if they're able to keep the pressure going or if their comeback season ends now, as well as the Lairon, after a rough initial season in the league, coming back this season with some big wins early and staying in contention for that top 4 throughout, getting back there in the end and trying to prove that they definitely earned that spot.
Excited to see if the Incineroar are so over or if they are so back. That's going to do it from us then with these play-in matches. Join us next week. We may not have power rankings, but we will at least be able to share the results of the play-in matches and see what we can do to preview the remaining matches left, because after this, it's quarters, semis, and finals. So in addition to these 3, only 7 more matches left until we can declare a winner for the Wooper Club League Season 12. Don't miss it. We'll see you then.